we have Lisa, the definitive edition, which combines both Lisa the Painful and its sequel Lisa the Joyful. With its earthbound inspirations, The Painful brings a side-scrolling RPG set within a post-apocalyptic wasteland known as Olath. We're going to focus predominantly on Lisa the Painful, and I went into these completely blind, which I'm told is the best way. In an experience that's supposedly all about choices, which is the correct one to pick it up or to avoid it? Well, let's find out. The experience will begin with the early life of Brad, a flashback revealing the origins of the character, and it paints a dismal picture. Flash forward an unspecified number of years, and Brad finds himself all grown up in a post-apocalyptic world where there appear to be absolutely no women. Shortly thereafter, he discovers a baby and takes it upon himself to become its sole carer. But this doesn't last long when the child goes missing and Brad devotes his life to getting her back. Within the first hour, you'll get your first major choice. These can affect the lives of your companions, but I did feel that in an experience that highlights these choices as an integral part of the game, there were certain things that you are forced to do that I would have preferred to have a choice about. Now, I don't want to spoil those, but they're quite significant character-defining events. Whether or not this is an intentional reflection of Brad's mental state, on reflection of my experience, I do feel like more choice may have been a better option. That really is a minor gripe in what's otherwise an excellently told narrative. You don't need flashy graphics and fancy cutscenes to make interesting and engaging characters. Now, I'm told by Glen that this version includes a few new story elements, and I particularly enjoyed the little campfire stories. These moments saw certain members of your party having interactions with Brad, whether it's waking him up in the night to regale him with one more tale that has no end. The writing and characterization is exceptional. Now, not everything within the game's narrative is handled equally. It deals with some incredibly sensitive subject matter, which it opts to frame within often absurd scenarios. I'm very keen not to spoil anything major, but let's just say there were a couple of moral double standards. While I've waffled on about story and narrative quite a lot, that's for a good reason. For me, that's where the heart of Lisa is. The gameplay in Lisa the Painful is a side-scrolling RPG that has a few quality of life things added in since they first came out. For example, there's a painless story mode, an item in your inventory which once used cannot be undone and will permanently make the game easy. Initially, you navigate round at a sluggish pace, climbing ladders, unable to jump small gaps, and simply able to scale one head height either up or down. In this regard, it feels quite antiquated, although within the context of the engine they used to create it, it's actually quite impressive. I really enjoyed the combat. The main reason for that were that many of the enemies are unique. They'll have their own dialogue lines, they die in the most horrific ways, and the actual pacing of the combat's very well handled. You can perform combination moves, which will essentially allow you to do specials by pressing one of the face buttons on the controller in the correct order. Or you can simply line up the next move. It makes a bit more hands-on, something which is usually less interactive, and I'm all for it. True to its inspirations, you won't see any health bars, and you'll generally just wail on enemies until they pass away, with usually an epic one-liner. Now, best in enemies will give you mags, which is the game's currency, as well as experience, and characters level up automatically, gaining you new moves and a nice little stat boost, although it doesn't restore your health. It also uses that classic system of having a knocked out character not gain you any experience. Health management is quite tricky. There are a few campsites that you can rest at, but even doing that is a choice here, as you may find that one of your party members gets kidnapped in the night. It's balanced well enough though that I didn't feel the need to grind, and although you can escape from combat, you generally won't need to, but there are a couple of sections that do have random encounters, which I personally just don't enjoy. Thankfully, as you move through the game, you do find ways of improving navigation. If the walking speed had remained as it did, the tedium would have really got to me. You'll soon discover an item that speeds things up, and unlike its initial release, this works in all areas, even when moving up and down ladders. There's one more issue that I had that I don't think anyone will ever notice other than me, and that's that when you transition between screens, Brad doesn't come in at the right spot. He should come in my opinion, right from the edge, but you're placed a couple of feet in front of it, and it actually caused a few deaths, as my brain was ready for the gap, and I was closer than I thought, and I died. Now, death means going back to the main menu screen, and then loading resume or continue, I think just a quick option to return you to the last save point might have made more sense. What's most surprising, other than how well the story's told and characters created, is the world building that's taken place. It's often assumed that a, air quotes, 2D game couldn't possibly create the types of environments that I would want to explore. Now those aren't my words, we see it in the comments almost every day, but the Lisa games do it brilliantly, and those environments change enough, with enough small detail, that you do feel like you're trudging across a wasteland, encountering all the Mad Max style horrors you'd expect, and it is horrific. As far as story and narrative go, it juxtaposes horrific and hilarious masterfully. Sure, it misses a few beats with its balancing at times, but it's well worth experiencing. Story and gameplay combined then score 18 out of 20. The controls are perfectly functional, but I'd never class these as fluid. I'd give them 15 out of 20. If you told me that David Firth had worked on this, I'd definitely believe you. In both the bleak world and the macabre characters and bosses, it has that unnerving quality that's difficult to put your finger on. One thing that caught me off guard was the excellent implementation of HD rumble as well. Small bushes will make the faintest of rumble, and walking on metal feels distinctly different, and it lends the visually visceral world a tactile component. The soundtrack is outstanding. With this version including 20 new tracks, which work well with the styling. For me, visuals and performance score 15 out of 20, while sound and audio scores 19 out of 20. Weirdly, when it launched, Lisa the Definitive Edition was full price, which includes both of the games. This was weird because the two games separately were actually reduced. It seems now though that they've caught up and the Definitive Edition has a 20% discount until July the 31st. That's if you're in the US regions. For some reason here in Europe, the bundle edition doesn't seem to be available. And for $19.99 in the US, you can expect around about 8 to 12 hours on your first playthrough, but remember there are multiple endings based on the decisions you've made. Then the sequel is much shorter, with Lisa the Joyful being completable in around 2 or 3 hours, but just like its predecessor, if you want to get 100% completion, you're looking at easily double that or more. While it's not without its flaws as a game, it does offer excellent value. It scores 18 out of 20. The Switch version of Lisa is the way to play it by all accounts. The quality of life improvements, the tweaks to the visuals, the added content. I won't say it's been a pleasure to review because the subject matter is heavy enough that certain aspects will hit home with most people, but you should experience it. It gets a SwitchUp score of 85%. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. Not the game I was expecting at all, but I am glad to have played through. Thanks to our Patreons, you're awesome, and our members, you are also awesome. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!